My name is Alex Moreau, the investigator you'll be following today. My role is to dive into places no one dares to go, to uncover hidden truths, no matter the danger. Today, we are going behind the scenes of Diddy's empire. But let me warn you, this story is much darker than anything you've imagined. If you're ready to look behind the curtain, then stay with me. It all started as a simple curiosity, a name often heard but carrying a shadow with it. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or just Diddy. The man had everything: millions of albums sold, thriving businesses, an undeniable influence on music and culture. But something felt off. There were whispers, barely whispered testimonies, people who preferred to remain anonymous, talking about a hidden side of this hip-hop mogul. One day, I received a phone call from a woman who chose not to give her name. Her voice trembled as she described a night gone wrong. It happened in 1991, when Diddy was still at the start of his career. A party, drugs and violence that should never have happened. I listened carefully, taking notes. This wasn't the first time I'd heard a similar story, but this time there were details, names, dates, places. It felt more concrete, more real. I knew this was the beginning of a long road, a road that would be neither easy nor safe. I started digging. The first public accusations against Diddy surfaced in the 1990s. An incident in a New York nightclub in 1999. A shooting that left several people injured. Diddy was there, at the center of the action. Of course, he was acquitted, but the incident left scars. People were afraid to talk. Most preferred to forget, to say it was just an accident, that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the more I dug, the more inconsistencies I found. Testimonies that didn't match. Payments made to alleged victims to buy their silence. Envelopes full of cash. Deals made in back rooms. It was clear something was being covered up. Money talked, and the system was corrupt to its core. I began compiling a list of names, people who were present, witnesses who had seen or heard things. Many had left the country. Others had simply disappeared off the radar. The puzzle was becoming more and more complex. I decided to meet one of the victims in person. She was hesitant at first, making me promise complete anonymity. She was scared, not just of Diddy, but of everything he represented. She told me about a party in the 90s, a gathering at a luxurious villa. Industry people, artists, producers. What was supposed to be a networking event turned into a nightmare for her. Drugs, coercion, abuse. She was just a young woman dreaming of a music career, and that night shattered her hopes. She showed me photos, letters, evidence she had accumulated over the years, blurry snapshots of her, visibly drugged, surrounded by familiar faces. She wanted to speak out, but no one listened. Everyone was too afraid of Diddy's empire, of what he was capable of. She spoke of threats, late-night visits from enforcers telling her to stay quiet. The fear was still visible in her eyes, even after all these years. But there was also determination. She wanted justice, even if it meant risking her life. What became clear as the investigation progressed was that Diddy wasn't acting alone. He was protected by an entire network. Producers, lawyers, influential friends. All had a vested interest in seeing him succeed, and all were willing to protect him at any cost. The threats began to come. Anonymous calls, barely veiled warnings. I was told to back off, to drop this investigation before it was too late. I even received an envelope slipped under my office door, filled with $100 bills and a simple message: stop before it's too late. It was an attempt to silence me, to scare me. but I couldn't. There were too many victims, too many lives destroyed by this story. I had a duty to them. Each new threat only strengthened my determination to see it through. In November 2023, everything changed. A former partner, Cassie, decided to speak out. She filed a lawsuit against Diddy for years of abuse. Her testimony was a shock to many, but not to me. I knew it was only a matter of time before someone found the courage to come forward. But it wasn't over. A few days later, other women followed. Accusations of rape, sex trafficking, stories dating back over 30 years. The testimonies of these women were harrowing. They spoke of nights where they were forced to take substances, moments when they were powerless in the face of Diddy's violence and that of his accomplices. Recordings began to circulate. Audio clips of conversations where Diddy threatened the victims, telling them no one would ever believe them. Diddy's lawyers tried to discredit these women, to paint them as money-hungry liars. But the evidence was piling up. The details they provided, the overlapping accounts, all pointed to an undeniable truth. The consequences were immediate. Diddy had to step down as president of Revolt, the channel he co-founded. But was that enough? For the victims, it was far from enough. They wanted justice, real justice, not just a symbolic gesture. Many of them wanted to see Diddy behind bars, to pay for all the harm he had caused. I saw Diddy's empire beginning to crumble, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. The problem wasn't just him, but the entire system that had protected him for so many years. Silent accomplices, industry figures who turned a blind eye, institutions that preferred money over justice. Diddy's fall was just the beginning. The entire network had to fall. Every person who contributed to this silence had to be exposed. I sat down with several of the victims. Some finally had the courage to speak publicly. Others preferred to remain in the shadows. But they all had one thing in common: fear. Fear of not being believed. Fear of retaliation. Fear that despite all the noise, nothing would change. Yet deep in their eyes there was also a glimmer of hope, a newfound determination. They had seen Cassie break the silence, and it gave them strength. Cassie had become a symbol for them, the one who dared. Each public testimony brought a little more hope. They were no longer alone. They had allies, people willing to support them, journalists, lawyers, even public figures beginning to take a stand. And I knew I had to keep telling their story, no matter the cost. I had promised not to let them down, to fight to make their voices heard. After months of investigation, I finally got hold of a crucial document, a recording from one of Diddy's collaborators, a man who had been by his side for years. He spoke of everything: abuse, threats, silenced victims. This recording was the missing piece, proof that everything the victim said was true. I knew releasing this recording would cause a seismic shock in the industry, but it was time for the truth to come out, for those who suffered to finally find justice. I contacted trusted media, journalists I could rely on. We coordinated a release to ensure no one could silence the truth. When the recording went public, the effect was immediate. Protests in support of the victims, artists taking a stand to condemn Diddy and everything he represented. Diddy's story is not just about a man who abused his power. It's about a corrupt system, an industry that prefers to protect its stars rather than listen to the victims. But things are changing. Slowly, perhaps, but they are changing. The voices of the victims are finally being heard, and the wall of silence is beginning to crumble. What I discovered is shocking, revolting, but it's essential that these stories are told, because silence is the most powerful weapon of abusers. And today, we have broken that silence. Light has been shed on the darkness of Diddy's empire, and now it's time to rebuild. Stay with me, because this is just the beginning. Diddy's empire is falling, and with it, many others will fall. Justice will eventually prevail, and I will be here to tell every moment of this fall. Epilogue. The events described here are based on real and documented accusations against Sean Combs, aka Diddy, over the years. However, the perspective adopted in this story is that of a fictional investigator designed to illustrate and embody the challenges faced during the investigation into such an influential figure in the music industry. This narrative is a combination of factual events and a fictional perspective to give more depth to the victims' testimonies. As of today, the various cases involving Diddy are still ongoing. In 2023 and 2024, several women filed lawsuits against him for sexual abuse, sex trafficking, and coercion. Diddy has denied all these accusations, claiming that the lawsuits are motivated by greed. Despite this, media pressure and testimonies continue to shake his empire, and he has been forced to step down from certain positions, including at Revolt. The investigations are ongoing, and the victims continue to fight for justice, supported by a growing movement of solidarity. The situation is constantly evolving, and only justice will determine the final outcome of these cases. If you enjoyed this investigation and want to learn more about other cases, subscribe to our channel. Every week, we explore dark stories, unsolved investigations, and give a voice to those who have been silenced. Join us to discover the truth, because the truth must never be hidden.